Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we kick off another round of our Haunted House Retrospective with The Conjuring, directed by Saw and Insidious director James Wan. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, screenwriter of the recent 3DS game TMNT based on the movie. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Also in Austin, back after all these years, it seems, Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man, which you can get from Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Mr. Drew.
Hello, baby.
Are you happy to be back?
I'm so happy to be back, and I'm happy to be talking about this movie.
I'm excited that this is the one that you get to come back on. I think I would be sort of bummed if you were coming back on, like, Exorcist 2 or you know, I think Audrey Rose would have been a good one to return on, but this is a good one.
Audrey Rose bums me out, so, like, I don't think it would have been much fun on that episode.
I actually have little girls in Audrey Rose. I mean, yes, I guess it bummed me out, but, you know, I just thought, I just really...
We already talked about Audrey Rose. Moving on.
Okay, moving on. Also, joining us from Denver is, with color commentary and the ability to keep us on track, as always, attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
That's my whip sound.
that's the most,
keeping on track whip sound.
That's the most uninspired whip sound I've ever heard. Please.
I'm not used to doing it.
So, okay. It's good to have you back as well. Okay, according to Wikipedia, The Conjuring is a 2013 American supernatural horror film directed by James Wan. It is Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga star as a married paranormal investigator couple, Ed and Lorraine Warren, whose stories reportedly inspired the Amityville Horror. The Warrens come to the assistance of the Perrone family, Ron Livingston and Lily Taylor, who are experiencing increasingly disturbing events in their farmhouse in Rhode Island in 1971. The Conjuring grossed over $318 million worldwide from its $20 million budget, making it one of the highest-grossing horror movies of all time. So, of all time, first impressions, I'm excited to be talking about this movie. Drew, you've been the one who's been gone for a while, so let's have you go first. In the interest of keeping it lively, we'll go Drew, Julia, and then Tony, and then I'll say something if there's anything left to be said in first impressions. So, Drew, first impressions, The Conjuring.
You know, when I first saw this movie, it was actually during a phase where Jamie and I were just kind of like, let's just rent whatever the heck we can get off a Redbox, and we'll take a chance on anything. So we watched, like, a lot of schlocky horror films during that time period, because that's just something you do when you rent a lot from Redbox. So this movie was actually a really nice surprise, especially since I'm not overly enamored of James Wan's other films. I think the only other one that I thought that I particularly liked was actually Dead Silence, which is another movie that I know a lot of people don't like. Mm-hmm. So I didn't like Saw, and, you know, I'm kind of indifferent towards Insidious. But this is a really cool, like, retro horror throwback. It seems like something that AIP could have made, or, you know, even Amicus. You know, it's just, I love the feel and vibe of this movie, and it's so creepy without, you know, it's creepy while still kind of being understated, which actually makes it the opposite of Saw in many ways.
Right.
And I like most of the central performances. I like the way the special effects are used. I mean, there's just a lot that I like about this movie, and I watched it again. I got it off of Netflix. I actually think I kind of want to own this. You know, this is maybe one that I want to own, because I just think it's a very well done, smartly acted, smartly directed ghost story. And Lord knows American horror hasn't been exactly batting 1,000 the last few years. So it's just great to see something. I was like, man, I was actually kind of impressed with this.
Wow, that's really strong opener. All right. Julia, had you seen this before, and what are your first impressions? What were your thoughts?
I had not seen this before, and I was psyched up for it by Jason, who kept saying, The Conjuring is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. So I was like, damn it, I still don't want to watch this movie. And then I actually was on a plane, and the person in front of me was watching it, but I couldn't hear what they were, but I could see that it was really scary. So I had, like, super high expectations for how scary it would be, and it totally met them. It's a super freaking scary movie. And for me, and I'm probably sounding like a broken record at this point saying this, but for me as a parent, particularly girls,
it's like I don't have kids, and it's still like I was watching it. Go ahead.
For me as a parent of girls, it was like that much more, and especially given that it's the mother that's the one who's, well, whatever. Anyway, the point is I had lots of different angles to come at it from, and it was scary from all those angles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really neat, by the way. This, I'll save it for it'll be one of the topics. But the way this family is presented is very interesting. Mr. Tony, first impression.
This movie is really scary. I saw it at a late night show, and actually the crowd was pretty good. These two guys sat close to me, and I guess they were friends. They were like, "Oh, we're going to see a horror movie," and they got wine, and they were going to have a good time. And watching them almost spill said wine and jump in their seats was pretty awesome as well. That was actually, like, I kept watching them because they kept reacting so
awesome.
so hard, jumping, and it was pretty great actually. But I agree with them. It's really scary, and screw that wardrobe. Dadgummit, man. It's got a lot of great parts. I think I agree with Drew. I think the effects are used really well. It's creepy. The jump scares that are in there, I wasn't just like, lately I've seen a lot of things where I kind of roll my eyes like, oh yeah, there's a jump scare, but I think it's effective in a lot of ways. In fact, if you really wanted to freak people out, oh man, my endorsement last week, Babadook, if you watch that back to back with this, as a parent, I don't know what you would do. I'd probably just want to just hug your kids a lot. And then you'd also be super freaked out because they're I think they would make a good double feature. So.
Yes. Wow. Okay. Wow. And the only thing I would add to that at all is I was of several minds watching this. There's so many different angles. I saw this movie by myself at the Alamo Draft House here in Denver. And I remember coming out and just the hairs standing on my arms as I walked to the car. It was one of those movies that was so freaky, and you stay freaked after the movie's over, which is, look, I'm willing to watch and enjoy and catalog a heck of a lot of horror movies that have no chills at all, that I enjoy because they have like one image that I think is interesting, that sort of adds to the art. This movie has a lot of interesting images, many of them borrowed, by the way, and it's just very effective. It's very, very well done. And I have to see Insidious. I haven't seen it yet, but having seen this, I'm thinking, obviously I got to watch Insidious. I did see Saw by this guy, and I thought that Saw was a fantastic movie. And it's interesting because, what I liked about Saw is that Saw is a very well done puzzle movie. It could very well have been an episode of The Twilight Zone. Two guys wake up, they're chained to some pipes, they got to figure out how to escape. That's a plot that that Beckett used, and that Rod Serling used, and One Step Beyond used. So that was one of those. This is his haunted house movie. There's also Insidious, which is another haunted house movie. I mean, I like that this guy really goes after.
I liked Insidious actually, but I've known some people who really complain about it, and some of their complaints I can go along with. But I still really liked it. I think it's scary.
Insidious is okay. I don't hate it. Saw to me would have been a really, it's funny you say Twilight Zone, because I've always said if it had just been like a 30-minute like Alfred Hitchcock Presents or Twilight Zone episode, I think it would have been great. But it's a bit thin for a 2-hour movie, let alone an entire franchise. But that could just be
that's possible. And of course, it got way grosser as the series went on.
I do love the ad. It's funny that you said that. I do love the advertising for the Saw movies. I think the advertising campaigns are brilliant. Like, I think that I will always go the bat for the posters. I think they're some of the best modern horror movie posters or best movie posters, period. So
I can't even comment on that. I have no memory at all of that, but I will definitely check it out. Okay, so let's get into this movie. So very basically, to recap, you have basically two families are at the center of this film. You've got Ron Livingston and Lily Taylor play this really great. In 1971, it was possible to be a middle-class couple and have a decent enough life. Their dad is an independent trucker. Ron Livingston is an independent trucker, and he's just bought this farmhouse out in the middle of Rhode Island, and that's great because he has a big old family to put in there. He's got 5 girls that stretch from like 16 to preschool.
And the only way that happens is when you keep trying for the boy.
That's right. That is. I think that's abundant. I think you're probably exactly right. I think the parents are interested in having a boy, and so they've got 5 girls, and that's great. So they've moved in. Maybe they got the house for a decent price because of some of the stuff that begins to happen. We don't hear anything about that. But the other central family, of course, is the Warren family. And they are, in this movie, a couple of paranormal investigator, lecturer, famous people of profound Christian faith and a penchant for going out.
They say that they're called paranormal investigators, but he's a demonologist and she's like a psychic or something.
Right, and also called crackpots or kooks.
Yeah.
And they have a daughter, and they have her mom also lives with them, the grandma, so that they can run off and do their investigations and stuff. So this is cool. Now, one thing that I want to talk about right up front, because people brought it up in the chat room a while back, is the Warrens. I've heard people say, hey, I will not watch this movie because I object to it putting the Warrens in a good light. Tony, what do you know about this? Because I think you had heard something.
Well, I mean, I'd have to go back, and I read something about it at the time, and then I need to go back. But basically, the movie paints them in a much more altruistic light, and there's allegations of them being way more exploitative and just not the cool, good people that they're portrayed in,
right.
in the movie. And there's a lot of controversy over, both their methodology and, how they played up certain things, how they dealt with people when they were doing these investigations, et cetera. I mean, there's, you can Google it. Like, there's been many, many articles written about it. And I had some friends who actually wouldn't see it in the theater because they're like, I had some people I knew who knew some people who'd been exploited by them or something like that. They were in those circles.
Hilarious.
And they were definitely
hilarious
like,
is the wrong word, but
but they were definitely in the those people are really kind of scummy and not very cool. I mean,
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
They're old now. The wife is 86.
So let's take so what do we think about that? I mean, I know what I think about that, and I think we talked about it a little bit beforehand, but I want to hear, like, do you do that? If let's say that you think that Henry Ford was a terrible anti-Semite and doesn't afford to be enriched, do you not buy a Ford because of that?
That's two different things, though, because this is a fictional story based on real events, so they're allowed to change it and make the people be perfect.
Sure. Well,
if they want to. It's not putting money into their pockets, although.
Well, but it is putting money into their pockets. I'm sure that they got. Let's assume they got money off of it.
They may get some money, and Lorraine Warren was actually a consultant on the movie, but.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it's not like you can do that with it because they're not calling it a nonfiction movie. They're saying it's a fictional movie based on real events. So they don't have to do it to portray them exactly right. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's like saying having a movie about, JFK and people being like, well, that's not what happened.
I mean,
right.
Let's
Well, I think when you have
how much. Come on. I mean, they don't even the two people they have cast. They don't even look like the real Warrens. They're like 1,000 times better looking. So, first of all, we've thrown that out of the.
Well,
out of the
I
window.
think people are still. Yeah, but people are still you have, even though it's fictional, you have the Warrens who were real people,
right.
And so when they didn't name them, they didn't change their names, which would be what you would really do if you just were like, hey, by the way, it's kind of sort of the Warrens. I mean, again, I don't have as much of a problem with that.
Though. I think Hollywood knows that it's even if they know that it generates controversy, it gets people talking, and that's the oldest trick in the book. I mean, I think I don't care. I don't if this is I don't think that any of the things when I'm watching this movie, I don't think I'm watching a documentary. I think I'm watching a horror film. Did anything in this movie actually happen? Maybe, probably not.
Well, you can't blame people for going. I mean, I'm with you. I wanted to see a scary horror movie, and I got that. But you can't blame people who, especially if they've been affected or know people have been affected, who go,
no, I don't blame
the
that
Warrens
at all.
got money. The Warrens or their museum or whatever got money for this. I don't feel like supporting the people who gave them money. You vote with your dollar.
Right. Let's say that there's something that's a trigger for you, and you go, look, that's a trigger for me. I don't want to be faced with that. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be part of the people who are into that. That corporation does things I disagree with. I don't want to do something that's tied to that corporation. And people do that all the time. And that's what activism is about too. I mean, I do it. I'm going to not watch that movie. And by the way, I'm going to tell all my friends, and they're not going to watch it maybe, or maybe they are. So that's a way that we can make societal change. At the same time, me personally, I got no triggers here. I don't care about the Warren. I literally, it's just, I take it for granted that the Amityville Horror is probably complete BS, and that none of it happened. I don't care. I just don't. I like the response.
But if you watch the documentary about the kid who was affected by that, you really start to kind of be like, wow, yeah, man, I can, there were problems with that and how it was handled and everything. So that, again, it depends on how far you want to take that and what your personal beliefs, how those come into play. I can't blame people for feeling that way and voting with their dollars. I mean, that's capitalism right there.
That's the way it works.
That's exactly how it works.
So, I'll give you another example. Let's say we wanted to do a story, and we knew that everybody in our community, or everybody who buys the kind of movies that we're making or comics that we're making, will be overly offended by something, even if we think they shouldn't be. It's up to you as an artist, But don't be surprised if people, let's say that you do something about the Holocaust, and a lot of people are going to be offended by using the Holocaust. You knew going in that you were likely to get smacked by doing that.
Sure. Those are the choices you make. And also, it's come out in the same kind of controversial thing. After the movie, they came out and said, this says based on a true story, but let me tell you, it wasn't nearly as scary and crazy.
Yeah.
Which, they're like, yeah. And then a few of the family who's living there now is like, oh man, all these people keep coming out here now because they were stupid enough to put where it was, the town it was located in, then not change that. And so now we have all these people coming out. Please stop coming out. It's actually a house that I live in. And I was reading a lot about that kind of stuff too, which really does kind of suck for the homeowners. Also, they were offended. There was a whole thing about, maybe I don't like the fact that you've disparaged the family, and who wasn't a witch who killed people, that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's the next one that I wanted to
Right. Well, it says in the IMDb that the real Bathsheba Sherman was suspected of witchcraft and of killing an infant child, but was legal. Her name was cleared after she was found not guilty.
All right. So this is the second major controversy, which is that Salon, for instance, which is a magazine that I respect. I love their articles, read it, rabidly every day. But Salon, their whole review was that people should not go watch this movie because it falsely says that the women who were accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials were actual witches, and in fact, most of them were innocent. That is a repulsive thing to say in a movie, and this, you shouldn't go watch this movie. And I was thinking, this is a guy who's really getting his back up over an injustice that happened 500 years ago.
That's kind of like getting mad that Bram Stoker portrayed Dracula as a vampire.
Yes, it is.
In my opinion.
I think it's unfortunate, and again, I can see where, again, that would be a trigger for somebody, especially if you're a witch, or if if that's something you follow, or you had family who were suspected of that. Like that's, I mean, it's a big deal. But again, this movie, as far as horror movies go, that's a trope that's common enough. Yeah. And that it's scary enough, that she was a terrible person, that, that to me didn't have as much to do with the real Bathsheba. Of course, that's not part of my family, so your mileage may vary.
But the story is based on what was the understanding of that person as opposed to what actually happened. So it's like, she was suspected of witchcraft and killing an infant child.
Well, are we going to get mad at Hocus Pocus next?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, in other words, come on, where's the statute of limitations here?
Well, very good question. See, you just nailed it. That's a very good point. There's a he just simply exploited a way of viewing a particular legend. And you could have done something else. So you just nailed it right there. Let's say I want.
A lot of people who were assumed to be werewolves in the Dark Ages and were also burnt at the stake were actually schizophrenic. I have relatives who are schizophrenic. That isn't going to stop me from going and seeing a werewolf movie.
Precisely.
Well, in Doctor Who, they actually say that the royal family are werewolves. So should we be mad about that?
I'm sure that there are a lot of people, actually, who would say, don't watch The Exorcist, I object to the Spanish Inquisition, and I don't like that it portrays priests in a positive light. And I actually do have friends who feel that way about the Exorcist movies. Absolutely. And so I think, so triggers. That's the bottom line. Is people can have triggers, and
people form opinions. That's natural and normal, and that's what makes the world go around. And
the fact is, enough people love this movie. I mean, this movie was a huge hit, so obviously most people weren't going. I think most people don't even realize that this is, like, they watch it, they probably, this is, like, saying this was based on a true story is about, like, saying The Town That Dreaded Sundown is based on a true story, or The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on, it has a basis in, honestly, I actually think the Dracula thing is actually about like there was a guy named Dracula and he was bloodthirsty. Bram Stoker took that name and hung it on a vampire. Like this is a extremely fictionalized version of something. And I think a lot of people probably don't even realize, like, they show pictures and everything. It probably barely registers that this is even remotely based on reality to a lot of people. They probably just say, like, ooh, ghost story. I like ghost stories. Exactly. Let's rent that. And saying that something is based on a true story, in my mind, is actually more like an incantation. It has almost no – I'd never take that literally. I always take it to be something that makes the hairs on your arm stand up. Oh, this was true. It just gives you a feeling that it could have happened, near that lake around here.
Well, I mean, Jamie and I, before we started recording, we're having a conversation about exorcism, because the past several movies you guys did about demonic possession versus reincarnation. It's funny, like, she has a very easy time believing in reincarnation, whereas I do not. But I have a much easier time believing in demonic possession. So I guess it's all relative.
And I believe in everything. So yay.
I believe in none of it. Hilariously.
I believe in all of it.
Wow, that's wonderful. You believe in half of it. Julia believes in all of it. I believe in none of it.
But that's the thing. That's what makes the world go around. Ain't it grand?
Okay. So, I'm actually enjoying hitting some of these topics more than just going down the plot. I have a question about this house in Rhode Island, because they bought this house and it's beautiful. And so, Tony, you said that it's a real place. I want to know, is the house we're looking at, is this forgive the ignorance, but is this a practical set or is this?
I didn't read enough about that, but there is a house. I don't know if that was the one that they filmed. Like I didn't, Again, things they probably
if it is, I hope they compensated the family well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's well. I guess you're right. This has got to be a set, But for instance, we've seen some horror movies where they'll take like an actual castle and they just put candles in it and stuff like that. I presume that what we're looking at, all of this was built on a soundstage somewhere, but it's hard to say. Clearly, the outside is a house filmed somewhere, and it is nice. And do you know what this looked like most to me? Especially with that tree. Can anyone get? We actually did an episode on, it was called, is it Night or House? I think Night of Dark Shadows. And Night of Dark Shadows looks a lot like this movie. It's kind of funny. Right down to the hanging witch off with the tree that has that enormous 90-degree tree limb, that the witch hanged on, and all that,
I mean, the filming locations are just North Carolina, according to the movie. So, I mean, according to IMDb. So, if it's not a sound stage, it's not built on a backlot. But I don't know that it's.
Well, no, you've got.
It's funny they went to the South to film New England. That's hysterical to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just the type of house they wanted in the movie. You're going to find that. You're going to be way more likely to find that. And by the way, if somebody boards up a
hidden
their basement, like just leave that alone. That's what I've learned.
Would you really? Would you really? I've had, every time we've moved, I've always had a dream, every single time. I always had a dream that I discover a hidden wing in the house that we move into. And it's the coolest thing in the whole world. Because now you have all this extra space, all these awesome, like they were saying, there might be some awesome antiques that we could sell for a lot of money. That's super cool. There's no way you're going to leave it boarded up. You might wonder why, but you're not going to.
Well, I think after you look down there, after the first time, you board that crap back up.
Well,
I don't think that would have helped. I don't think that would have helped.
They've got the demon attached to them once all that happens.
Yeah, I guess so. But man, I don't know. It's in a horror movie. It's rarely worth the extra space. That's all I'm saying.
The problem is they don't know they're in a horror movie. That's the problem.
People never know they're in a horror movie. I think most people go through their life thinking they're living in a Meg Ryan movie or something.
Yeah, well,
I don't think victims in horror films realizes that they, which if you could, only in the Scream series do the characters actually know that they are in a horror movie because it's meta.
Well, and that's part of the reason why this movie takes place in 1970. I realized that the actual source material takes place in this dated time, but the movie takes place in 71. It doesn't have to because nobody cares. So, do you think part of it is to have people be a little bit less media savvy? And
I think that. I mean, when you do that, you make those choices.
I think there.
And it makes sense in that you deal with the whole technology aspect and all that.
Right, no cell phones.
Yeah. I think there was also stylistically they were trying to do a 70s drive-in style horror movie. I mean, this really has the look of one of those movies.
Well, but it was, I mean, I want to come back to how it deals with those influences.
Well, and they want to make it feel like it's a true story. I mean, the whole thing is that they're saying this is a true story, and these people were, like you said, doing this in 1971.
It's so gorgeous, though. I mean, I can't get over how well set directed, how designed this movie is. The coffee cups. I don't know. All you guys, we're all from the South, so all these things should be familiar to us. Those vintage percolators that Lily Taylor has, and the coffee cups that have the sort of smoked glass. They're cheap ceramic coffee cups you buy.
Can I say Lily Taylor? This is the best. She's a very quirky looking woman. The 70s hairstyle really suited her well. This is the best she's ever looked to me.
Yeah,
she does a really great job too.
They're all wearing Woolworths clothing, and they're
well, the dress Lorraine is wearing is crazy. That's just the most. She's so Amish in that outfit.
Yes. Well, yeah. No, that couple is truly odd. They seem to be. Their clothing is so odd that it's almost retro or hipsterish.
That's what I'm saying. It's like Amish or something.
Yes, I mean it's affected. Whereas the Perrons are just wearing their Sears, and Woolworth's clothing, and just sort of hanging out in their rural 1971 existence, which is not remotely like our existence. There's no internet, they're watching basically. There's a whole big thing of, my heart thrilled when I saw a scene where they come to the TV and it's crackling with static, because it means, oh, that's right, TV's over. TV was on, there was stuff on TV, and then it's midnight at whatever time, and then they show the plane and they play the national anthem and no more TV, and then it just goes to static. And
I wonder how many people watching that don't understand that that's what that is, and think that that means it's more like Poltergeist, and that the reason there's static is because it's haunted, the TV is haunted, and not because TV is just over for the day.
Boy, that's a really good question. If I sent out a quiz, hey, pop quiz listeners, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, there's static on TV. What is the most likely reason this is? I want to know how many would say, well, because TV's over, And I remember those days. TV's over. There's nothing else to keep you company except for maybe a book, or you go to sleep.
Yeah,
people would actually read? What?
Right.
What? What did you say?
I don't know.
He said
I'm skeptical of this idea.
And I loved, she's got, Lily Taylor has this radio that has these big analog dials on it, and it's this sort of beige plastic. Again, a radio that you would buy for cheap at the drugstore. Mm-hmm. It is just one of the most skillfully art-directed films.
Oh, the cars. The cars were so awesome.
Oh, my gosh, this giant, Ford Fairlane and this old, ugly Pontiac station wagon that you completely believe that this family would buy. The girls, so I just really enjoyed seeing a presentation of the 70s that didn't seem, to my eye, to be overly it didn't seem like, hey, 70s. It seemed more
it didn't look like the Dark Shadows Tim Burton movie, which was to the point, it was 70s to the point of being kitschy.
Or what's that movie with Amy Adams and it's the
the one where they're
American Hustle?
Yeah, American Hustle. I don't know why Amy Adams is the first name that came to my head, but yeah.
Yes.
That was so, this is.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. See, that's what.
Or Anchorman's another good example of there's a certain stylization, anytime, and we talked about this a lot when we did Little Shop of Horrors too.
Yeah.
When you're doing a pastiche of a bygone era. This is a much more lived-in, realistic quality.
A really wonderful way of putting it. It feels like a 70s.
It's like Halloween, and it's supposed to feel like Halloween, I think.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That actually is the 70s. Yeah, that's a good point. Or Reagan, in 1973, The Exorcist, they actually lived there in 1973. So of course all that stuff was.
By the way, I mentioned Halloween. Did you guys notice that at one point they said it's November 1st, and nobody ever mentioned Halloween? I was like, how did we not have Halloween happen? Or have any Halloween decorations or whatever, or maybe they don't have decorations, but those the costumes. I don't know, it was really interesting. He's like, it's November 1st. I'm like, wait, we ignored Halloween.
Well, a month went by, they've been scared by the ghosts, and they started sleeping in the living room. I think they just didn't get into it,
Yeah, but why would you do Halloween when you have a real ghost in your house? I think that would be
right. What I'm saying,
a ghost of a witch. That's two Halloween things. It's a witch and a ghost.
That's right. And by the way, remember, in House of Dark Shadows, once again, the whole haunting in House of Dark Shadows involved the ghost of a witch who was hanged, who has come back to possess the people in that family. Let us count the many influences of this movie, because one thing I think is that this movie, although extraordinarily skillful, is basically it is a pastiche in the same sense that those other movies you mentioned, they're pastiches. This one looks so great, but really it's cobbled together from an awful lot of just Tarantino-esque straight-up quotations, stuff you've seen other places, and it's here done perfectly, so you can point and go, oh, I know that, and yet it still does something cool. So I see Dark Shadows in here like crazy. I see Amityville Horror. I mean, the influence of the Amityville Horror is so.
Well, I mean, we have to say the Exorcist, because there's an exorcism, and
there's a demon possession. And, which, you guys are going to have to let me know if that actually was effective for you.
And, of course, there's the doll.
Yes, there's a creepy doll, which goes all the way back to the Twilight Zone. And, and...
Well, there's a long, like the long history of creepy dolls, including Saw and Dead Silence, which are both doll-centric.
By the way, that doll looks... the only thing I thought was a misstep in the movie is that I thought that the doll didn't look like a doll that any human would ever actually buy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I like the look of the Annabelle doll, and it's gross over stylization.
And they said in real life it was actually supposed to be Raggedy Ann doll.
Yeah, it's a Raggedy Ann doll. It doesn't look like that at all.
Much creepier. No, but I'm saying I think it would have been a better choice to use a Raggedy Ann doll.
Because of the iris.
The Evil Dead, I think parts of this remind me of, not in any of the sequels or the remake, but the original Evil Dead has some of that going on with it, especially the look of the witch. She has a very, very much kind of reminds me of the cellar or hag in the first Evil Dead.
Oh, do you remember the cellar actually in the Evil Dead remake? These two cellars now maybe cellars look like cellars, but I'm telling you, I got a lot of vibes off of the recent Evil Dead remake in just the way the lower part of this house is presented.
And there's even a little bit of the poltergeist because of all the kids getting thrown around and everything.
Absolutely, yeah, heavy duty poltergeist stuff.
The Haunting, the Legend of Hell House. I mean,
there's the birds, for Pete's sake.
Oh yeah.
We actually at one point
real life real birds
have like killer birds crashing into car windows. Yes, I mean basically the movie is an encyclopedia of horror knowledge that has been just applied to the screen. Oh, of course, you mentioned poltergeist not just with the kids, but also with the parapsychologists who come in and set up all their stuff.
And again, the staticky TV.
The staticky TV from Poltergeist. And
this movie does get a little bit meta at one point, too. Like, my favorite line in the movie is when the dad goes, he's like, why are you putting crucifix everywhere? I was like, when the dark spirit, holy images makes them really angry. And then he's like, kind of like holding up a cross to a vampire. And then Ed Warren goes, yeah, exactly, except I don't believe in vampires.
Right.
That's probably my favorite line in the entire movie right there.
Yes, no, it is, and you're kind of glad that there's some place, apparently that is well past murderous crows, that they will draw a line and say, no, there will be no vampire.
Dracula will not movie. Count Yorka has just moved up the street.
I mean, there's a point in the movie. I mean, it's very skillfully done. This kid's good. There's a point in the movie where the parapsychologists come and they start setting up all their stuff, and they're making pancakes and they're plugging in equipment and they're having a good time and they're working on cars. And it's, as Julia pointed out, quoting the Save the Cat theories, this is the fun and games section of the movie where everybody is like, they're like doing their thing and everything's going to go the right way now. And it's so skillful because, all great artists making movies are going to do this for us. Give us a time to like breathe and watch the characters reset and regain their strength from one another.
Yeah, I think it'd be actually interesting to see a movie that psychs you out and makes it look like this is the part of that movie when that happens, and then something terrible happens right then.
that actually, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But the thing is, unfortunately, you'd have to go super, super ironic because you still need it. As a viewer, you still need a point in the movie for everything.
Well, it doesn't take long for that to end, though.
Yes.
Like, when that's
right.
going on, like, it doesn't take long before all of a sudden they're like, yeah, pancakes.
No, yeah, you're
great.
right, you're right.
Bah, bah, bah. Like, things go south pretty quickly. I think that the weird part about the Annabelle thing is, like, it is kind of an aside. There's kind of two movies going on. There's the Annabelle one, which I had actually read about years ago. Like, in some, there was a book about, poltergeists and devil dolls and that kind of stuff. And so I'd read about that, and I was like, hey, wait, this is that story I read about.
Yes,
but
with the nurses.
Again, like, it still struck me as, like, no maybe it's just because it is the 70s, but we've all watched a lot of horror movies. We talk about them constantly, on the show. And so at the point where, the women go, well, we didn't know any better. We thought, hey, why don't we invite this spirit into our house? When I was reading that about the original story, I was thinking, no, you don't ever freaking do that. You don't know what that spirit is.
Yeah, let's actually walk through a little bit of the plot, just so in case anybody hasn't watched it and is listening to this. So that's what it opens with, is these kids that are being interviewed by the Warrens, and they say, "Oh yeah."
To be fair, they're nurses. They're 20-something women, but
well, they're kids to me because they're half my age. So they're talking about how they got this doll, and then there was this little girl who wanted to live with them, a ghost of a little girl, and so they said, okay. She said, "Can I inhabit the doll?" And they said, "Sure." And then she started writing on it with red crayon everywhere and breaking stuff. And so they tried to get rid of the doll, and the doll came back. And the Warrens say, this is not a ghost of a little girl. It's an inhuman spirit that is haunting this doll. And you should never, like Tony says, you should never have invited it into your house.
No,
and so that's where we meet Ed and Lorraine Warren.
They were like, wow, this poor kid who was murdered, nearby.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we let her into our house? Because we're nurses and we help people.
Right.
You help people, not supernatural
it's like the what is it? Satan, the devil lies, or whatever.
Sure.
The demon lies. So anyway, but that's how we meet Ed and Lorraine Warren, and then we go and meet Ron Livingston and Lily Taylor, the Perrons. And they're moving into the house with the awesome boarded cellar with their 5 girls, and the 5 girls are playing this creepy-ass game where they're, blind. One of them's blindfolded and they play hide-and-seek, but instead of seeking with your eyes, you just seek by sound, or the other person claps a couple times.
This is the other big motif of the movie.
That game really scared me, especially when the stairs
has anybody heard of, and then I want to get back to the framing story, but has anybody ever heard of this clapping game that they do where
hide and clap
they do
or
blind
whatever?
I actually used to play that with my brothers as a kid.
Did you?
That's the thing. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so it's basically
I did
Marco
not,
Polo.
and I'm closer to the age of these girls than you are, and I don't know that.
Well,
who
knows? Maybe it's something they do we're all from the
places.
same area, so I have no idea. I can't explain it at all. This is Marco Polo in a house, basically. You're wearing a blindfold,
with a blindfold,
and everybody else just chatters out, and you call out, and they have to answer.
So that theme is one of the scary things in the movie, which is that at some point the littlest one, who's left home after everybody else goes to school, is upset that nobody ever wants to play with her. So she says, "Mom, can I play with you hide and clap?" So they're playing this upstairs, which again, terrible idea given that they don't really know the house and there's stairs. And so the mom's wearing the blindfold, and the little girl is clapping, and the mom's looking for her, and mom ends up in the bedroom with this wardrobe, and she knows the clapping is coming from the wardrobe. The wardrobe opens. We see the wardrobe open, but we don't see any little girl.
Wow.
We see the wardrobe open.
And a little pair of arms.
Lily Taylor, what?
A little pair of arms sticks out of the clothes.
And then a little pair of arms sticks out of the clothes and claps.
Yeah.
And so she goes to the wardrobe. She looks. She can't find anybody. She takes off her blindfold, at which point her dog from the other side of the room and goes, "You took off your blindfold. That's not right. And you're cheating or whatever." And you're like, holy crap.
Yeah,
that was one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
That's not the scarier thing. The scary to me is the point where she's lost in the basement. And
then
you hear
and then you see it again, the same thing, the kids clapping next to her. Yeah. But that's the first one. That's the first big scare.
Hands are so unnerving to me for some reason.
Totally.
What are the biggest scares in this movie? Because that's definitely one of them.
Well, the dog is killed right at the beginning. The dog is killed, so that's kind of sad, but it's not really scary. It's just disturbing. And the clocks are all stopped at 3:07, and the mom has bruises. So there's all this creepy stuff. But I think that's the first one to me that is like a jump, not even a jump scare, but just a scare.
To me, the biggest scare of the movie, my personal favorite, the one I kept telling people about to explain to them why the movie was awesome, is the business of, if you've ever shared a room with a sibling, when the girl wakes up and she is convinced that she sees somebody standing in the corner, and she wakes up her sister and says, "There's somebody standing right there." That is such a scary scene. It's even scarier to me than the stuff when they are freaked out looking under the bed because they think.
Well, and back up a little bit, because the reason she even wakes up is because the creature pulls her off the bed.
Yeah, pulls her like in her bed,
but down the bed. Yeah.
I have to say, I think the choices of wording really enhance that scene. Because at first she's talking about it like it's a person, and then suddenly somewhere in that scene it flips. She stops saying person and she starts saying it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I'm always like, that's just that simple choice of wording really amps up the mood.
Right, because she says someone is standing there, but rather than say he or she, she's like, it is looking at us or whatever. And so you're just like, so someone isn't it.
What is she?
You're
You're wondering what the hell is she seeing? Like, that's like the thing that because you don't see what the girl is seeing. And this is a great example of how sometimes in these kind of movies, less is more. Yeah, and, especially coming off of the Exorcist series, which is a very in-your-face kind of horror.
Right.
Like this,
well, we do eventually see it, because I'm assuming that what she's seeing is
the witch.
The creature, the witch that's on the wardrobe.
But the actual visual of the witch is not as scary as like what you saw with your head.
It's pretty freaking scary. It's freaking scary.
And don't get me wrong, she's scary.
Go ahead, Tony. What is it?
Also, remember that even when they're filming with the camera, the vision of the witch is, when it's attached to her, is just a ghostly, dark thing.
Yeah.
So she could be seeing that and not the witch, because
True.
they see that in
equal.
They see that in equal measure with the witch. I mean, for me, it was the fact the build-up of. Yeah. Well, it was the build-up of the girl who was constantly sleepwalking, bumping up against the wardrobe until finally the witch, and then finally the witch, like where she looks up and she's like helping her daughter, and then the witch is sitting there on top of the wardrobe, pounces on her, like that scene, and that was, I think, where some people spilt their alcohol in the draft house.
I love the sound. Can I say I love the sound effects, like particularly the sound effect anytime they have the visual where they just have the feet of the witch as it's being like flung around on a noose, like the sound effects.
They did a great job with sound design.
Another thing that's unnerving about it is that you don't ever know who you're dealing with, because there's so many spirits. There's not just one.
Yes.
So it's not like in some movies where you've got like The Exorcist, where you've got the one demon. Here it's like you've got Rory, the little boy who's clapping, who's playing, and the littlest girl is seeing him in this music box mirror. She actually sees him in it. And so that's creepy and weird. But then you've got the disturbing witch, and then you've got I feel like there's the big woman that says like
the maid.
She made me do it. The maid. Yeah. And it's like all these different things. So you never know exactly what you're doing. And then, like you said, there's the dark spirit, the black, the shadow, whatever it is. So you never know exactly what's about to come. Even when you know there's something coming, you still don't know which one you're going to be dealing with, whether it's going to be the most malicious one or the playful one or whatever, And then it turns out that the problem is actually, the real danger is that it's possessing the mom, and the mom is the real.
And they say it early on. Remember, they say, "Hey, demons don't possess things; they possess people."
Right.
So they let us know that this is coming. And this movie has it's not quite a twist. It's just suddenly you find yourself in a movie that's going in a different direction than haunted house movies usually go. Because generally, a haunted house movie is you solve it and you get rid of the ghost and set it free by learning the secret. It's as simple as that. Mm-hmm. It's usually work out the secret and you can solve the haunted house and the movie will be over.
Well, they do kind of do that. They work out a pattern that the spirit of the witch, who's we say witch. We're not talking about a Wiccan. We're talking about a devil worshiper who murdered her own baby in a grisly human sacrifice.
She's a bad witch.
And then cursed the lands, like that no one was ever going to take the lands.
Right.
And so she possesses the mother and kills the child. That's the pattern. So no one will ever have her land. Yeah.
That's the risk here. So the mom, we're seeing Lily Taylor having all these bruises, and she doesn't know what's causing it. She thinks it's anemia. Then we see Lorraine Warren downstairs doing laundry for some reason, which I was completely baffled by, but whatever. She's outside doing laundry, and because I'm like, haven't they been there like one day? Why is she washing all the sheets I don't know. But anyway, so she's washing sheets, and there's sheets everywhere, which is, I guess, a very something that you would not really have unless you're in the country or in at the time prior to
it's
dryers.
the 70s. There's always sheets to hang up.
Sheets, yes. And so anyway, so she's got sheets everywhere, and so one of them flies off as the weather suddenly turns. It flies off, takes a weird ghost shape, flies off, and then she sees in the window this figure. And so she's like freaking out. Freaking out. She goes upstairs, and she goes, and she can't get into. I keep calling her Lily Taylor, but it's what's the mom's name? It's Carolyn, I think. Yeah, Carolyn's room, and she can't get in. And then Carolyn's throwing up, and all kinds of horrible. And we've seen that she's getting all bruised and everything. It's awful. We see that like the demon has been doing something to her, kind of like. I didn't even understand, like, she was vomiting in her mouth or something.
Well, that's how, in a lot of these movies, the ghost will possess somebody by vomiting ectoplasm into their mouth.
And so we see all this, and Lorraine can't get into the room, and then finally Carolyn comes out of the bathroom. She's like, oh, no, I'm fine. It's all good. So you're like, what the hell just happened? So that's kind of when you start to see that, okay, so there really is something going on here that is not good to Mom.
Yes. And this is actually where the movie wraps up. Is that and we should go ahead and talk about this. So it's very simple. The way you're right, Drew. They figure out that hey, the pattern always is, because they have a research section. Pattern always is ghost possesses Mom. Mom tries to kill the kids, and the cycle will continue forever. So if they don't manage to stop Lily Taylor, who's been possessed and has kidnapped her kids to take them back to the house because the family's staying away for a few days. Then the cycle will continue forever. And by the way, there will be, 3 people will be dead, the mom and the 2 kids. And so the last section of the movie is a really pretty terrifying chase where Lily Taylor has been demonically possessed and is like raving. Does this work?
And this guy Ed Warren is going to do the exorcism because just like in The Exorcist, they're having trouble getting an exorcism approved by the church.
In this case, just because of timing, because everything's moving really fast. So Ed Warren is going to do the exorcism. But I want to know if this whole section where in the third act, traditionally in the third act you mix everything up and you go in a new direction. This movie does that, but maybe a little too dramatically. Do you guys like the exorcism direction of the end of the film?
I like it. I didn't bother me at all. Yeah, I mean, there's this strong vein of Catholicism throughout and certainly the Warrens, as eccentric as they are painted throughout as deeply religious.
The fact that the other family isn't is actually a big part of the problem of not getting it approved through the church right away because they're not Catholic. They're not religious.
It's funny. They should be Catholic. There's no reason.
Well, they're not in real life. That's the thing is, like I said, they're trying to keep it close to the real people so that they can say it's based on a true story, and obviously the real people weren't.
Well, I actually think it does serve a story purpose. I mean, if they had like a church to turn to, then they probably wouldn't have ever contacted the Warrens. They would have been like, hey, like, let's go talk to our this is kind of creepy. Let's go talk to our minister.
Right. No, you're exactly right. You're totally right, because that's what they do in the Amityville Horror, is they go to Rod Steiger, the priest. So you're exactly right. They act like people who are of a modern age. They go to the university to hear somebody lecturing who deals with stuff like this. That's why. So anyway, yes, you didn't have a problem with it. Tony didn't have a problem with it. Joya didn't have a problem with it. Lots of people on our Facebook page did. They felt like it was a departure for the film.
It kind of comes out of that where it all kind of wraps up. It does escalate very quickly. It kind of comes out like, okay, and now this is going to happen, and so the resolution, the kind of almost fairy tale ending, comes fairly quickly considering how much haunting there.
Fight it off, which is a dramatic note that we've seen thousands and millions of times. Where the possessed person has to become, Willow's become Dark Willow, and Xander has to talk her into being Good Willow again, and we're just going to see that over and over. The end of Altered States is like this, and so here, but it works. Hey, works for me. I'm watching. She's picturing the.
I liked it. I liked it because I feel like it was a little twisty because you think, oh, okay, he's going to do this exorcism and it's going to work. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, it's not going to work. It's going to have to be her. I mean, I think that's kind of cool. I don't know, especially because she's about to kill her kid. I mean, she's about to kill her kid. She's the only one physically, because the kid has crawled under the crawl space and Carolyn has gotten to her and no one else can get to them. And she's got a pair of scissors. So she's about to kill this kid if something doesn't happen. And the only thing they can do is call on her to remember to break through, you know.
And
cool. And again, as a mom, I mean, I think that actually would be the most powerful thing, would be to pull the love of the mother rather than any kind of, especially since the guy's not a priest. So I think if he succeeded in an exorcism without being a priest, it would take some of the magic out of that whole, you know, you have to be a priest to be able to do an exorcism thing, you know, like thing.
Do you think the daughter seems to roll with it pretty well, that her mom was terrible and now she's not possessed anymore, and the daughter's...
It's not the same person. Literally, it's not played by the same person. Like, the demon is played by a man. It's like, and so whenever she sees her mom looking like a normal person again, she knows that it's not, that's not the same. I mean, it's just like she's been...
Well, and in fact, I know that our girls, that plot point was instantly understandable to them in a million TV shows they watched. It's like, oh, look, Spider-Man's being controlled by the bad guys. It's totally, maybe it might even be harder for adults to grapple with.
Well, yeah, if you see how kids just bounce back. Like if you yell at your kid and then you go, I'm sorry, they're like, okay, we're good.
Right.
And
well, it's not like they haven't all been living with this.
They'll hold the grudge about it for maybe weeks.
What was that about, Drew?
It's not like they haven't all been living with this for, a month or so, if not longer. I mean, they're all acutely aware that there are supernatural events in their life.
Yeah. There's this wonderful moment I just want to mention before we wrap up and do endorsements. The part where the witch is on top of the wardrobe and leaps on the sisters is a part where actually shit is going down all over the house. So everybody's like dealing with their own thing, and so at every part of the house, somebody is like screaming and throwing things and like stomping and on the ground rolling around with demons. And it's at that exact moment when the house is just incredibly crazy that Ron Livingston comes back from a trucking trip, and so he's just parking his truck out front, this is probably one of the giddiest and funnest and also scariest moments in the whole picture, because every parent can relate to coming home and walking into a situation that seems so insane that you can't, for the life of you, figure out how in the hell everything got to be exactly the way it is.
I'm laughing because you're saying every parent, but you mean every dad.
Well,
because there are definitely days when Jason has walked in and everyone has been screaming. And he's just like, holy crap.
Understand.
I'm turning around and running back.
But yes, I totally identified with that moment because he's coming into the house going, what the fuck is going on? Pardon. All right. We should do endorsements. No.
Well, do we want to talk about the Warrens as they are presented in the movie at all? I mean, we haven't really talked about that, and they are the central characters of the film.
Yeah, we've hit the themes. I mean, you're right. We should. Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about how they were presented very benevolently. It's funny, we talked about the real ones more than the.
We talked about their costuming a little bit.
Lay it down on me. What's your thesis on
that? I don't actually care about the real Warrens at all, but I like these characters. Like if they were to do a movie series with this version of the Warrens, I'd probably go see every version.
Sequel to this. Not Annabelle.
Well,
there's going to be another. There's Annabelle is a spin-off. There's going to be a straight up sequel to this movie with
I will totally go see that. I think
is it called the Amityville Horror?
Well, that would make sense. I think it's called The Conjuring 2 right now. But go ahead.
I think that the two of them as a couple are very, they got a good chemistry together, and I think it is, whether or not this syncs up with the way the actual Warrens are or not. Like, it is nice to see characters that are so, like, again, I talk about this a lot, that are actually benevolent in a movie. Because everybody is so cynical right now. And, you know, they aren't presented as cartoon characters. You know, they're not like, not believable people. But, you know, they have a good ethical center, and I really like seeing that.
The only thing about them that was negative was that they really didn't seem to give much of a crap about their kid.
I didn't take it that way.
Yeah.
I took it that they are...
Well, they cared more. Let me put it that way. They cared more about the work than they did
married
about
to their work.
Yeah,
I think that's... Yeah, I think that's a good criticism. And also the Warrens in here. I mean, it's also nice, you know, I think we've also talked about this, Drew. Like, it's nice to see a married couple that isn't, you know... They truly, like, he truly cares.
Yeah, they like each other.
You can't keep doing this. You don't want, you know, bad things to happen like last time bad things happened. Like, he truly cares for her. She's kind of looking around like, oh, you know, this is a great family. We want to have more great families like this in our life. Look how great, you know, they're also want to share, you know, other families that have it good. You know, until it turns really bad, they really care about that, you know. And and I mean, it does kind of suck. It would be nice if the real Warrens were that, you know, where people don't have a problem.
I have to say, it's also nice because, like, even though they are religious and they are eccentric, they don't come off as sexless the way married couples do often in movies.
No, they're a lovable, loving, romantic couple. I mean, in my mind, this is like, look, there's a wonderful Spencer Tracy biography of Thomas Edison. And let me assure you that it has nothing to do with the real Thomas Edison. You know, it is just complete nonsense, and Spencer Tracy's awesome, and you're like, wow, Thomas Edison's a great guy. I'm fine with that. You know, these guys, the Warrens, the fictional characters who may be the stars of a new series, I am down with spending more time with them because I love how sacrificing they are and how smart they are and supportive of one another. These are great characters.
Well, and I like that they each have their own gift. They each have their own thing that they're all about. You know, he's not the one who's getting these visions or whatever. He's kind of the demon expert and all. You know, and she's the one who's dealing with. So they definitely have their roles identified. Yeah.
They're not resentful. That is one thing though that they're not resentful of other people. They're not snooty. It's amazing. It's really great to see these characters who are essentially a model for how, I don't know, they're true heroes in that sense. You know, they're role models for us, which is just rare. I like it. It's funny that we're all coming down on the side of the fact that these are essentially superheroes. You know, but
and again, I make no. I'm betting, you know, the actual people like are nothing like this, and you know
these characters are doing
fine.
This for free, by the way. Apparently, to my knowledge, no money is changing hands. They're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah,
which is astonishing. I mean, I'm not mocking them. I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to do that, but they're just doing it because I think they regard it as just their Christian duty to go around and help couples that are in trouble. It's kind of neat. And Julia, you know, we don't know. Maybe after this couple of crazy weekends, you know, they'll have a couple weeks at home where they just like, you know, sign 8x10 glossies and mail them out to people.
Well, you have to wonder how many times have they brought demons home to this little poor child.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yes, there is the part of the backstory involving all the framing where they set up the world by showing us Annabelle is that there's a storage room in the Warrens' house where they put all their spooky stuff. Yes, it's the cursed objects room. I love that they call it that. This is the cursed objects room. And it's just so insane, you know. And they have this long-suffering, like 9-year-old who just sort of wanders around and has to deal with you know the cursed baby doll, the cursed magic box, the cursed maracas.
You know, it's really easy to imagine like a PG Saturday morning cartoon version of this. Where the little girl is the main character.
I love it.
And her horrible, but well-meaning, but ultimately horrible monster-fighting parents are constantly getting her into trouble.
They're constantly leaving town, and she's constantly having to deal with the demons that are still in the house because of the stupid.
Yeah, Hanna-Barbera would have animated it.
She has to fight a different demon every week, or a different ghost or whatever. We should write that along with Fire Shark and whatever else Tony came up with.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder how much the museum thing had to do with Friday the 13th, the series. You know, when you look at how the museum is set up, it's not unlike, you know, the set design for. I mean, I don't think these would be ripped off or anything. I'm just saying that, you know, the vault and all of that stuff that's in Friday the 13th, the series, you could definitely be like, hey, wait, the Warrens had one of those. Only, you know, they were tracking that down every week. Kind of similar, actually.
Right.
So my endorsement would also be check out Friday the 13th, the series.
There was also a Canadian series that didn't last, but it was turned into a couple of direct-to-video features that was about a guy who ran a curio shop that had lots of cursed things. I'll bet if we started researching, we'd find probably many stories about cursed curio shops with.
Sure.
I was always mad at Friday the 13th, the series, as a kid because it didn't actually have Jason in it.
I mean, I can absolutely. I was at first, and then it's actually like a pretty decent series. So, but I can definitely understand.
But I had to kind of rediscover it as a 20-something when they reran it on Sci-Fi Channel. Because as a kid, it just
called it Friday the 13th. Was it that New Line owned it, and they just said, "Well, this is our strongest"?
Yeah, it was like they wanted to tie it into something that was already a thing, and but that was the thing. It was in the early days of syndicated television, so they wanted, you know, surefire things. The same reason why we got Star Trek: The Next Generation. Actually, it's
well, they were like, you know, well, that Halloween 3 thing worked so well. Let's do that.
Silver Shamrock. We have not yet done Halloween 3. I can't believe we're not going to get to that Halloween either. So, you know, soon.
There's always next year, Jason. There's always next year.
All right. We've definitely got to do our final thoughts. I like the way that this conversation has gone because I think we've hit a lot of good stuff. But if anybody has more concepts that they want to ask us about or things that they want to follow up on, I encourage you to hit us up on the Facebook page. Just look for Castle of Horror, and we will be there, ready to engage with you. All right, final thoughts. We'll go around, same direction. I think we hit Drew because he had been gone for weeks on end, seeing the world. So, Drew, The Conjuring, wrap it up.
I just like this movie. I mean, like I said, it hits a lot of good points with me. I think it's very well done for all the reasons that we discussed. I love the fact that it's essentially a throwback horror movie too. You know, it wears its influences on its sleeve without coming off as shamelessly derivative. It actually, you know, I don't think I said it enough. I mean, I know everybody else did, but it actually is pretty scary. Which is kind of amazing to think because this is a horror movie with barely any body count.
Yeah.
If any. I actually don't think anybody gets killed in this movie. So
you're exactly
except for in the past.
Yeah, except there's people. They talk about people getting killed, but no one's actually been killed. So that's amazing. You know, it's just a very effective horror flick, and I highly recommend it. And I'm glad we're kicking off this new series with this
really
movie.
Good haunted houses. And, this is a strong one.
Well, and like we said, we were saying before, it's a crossover between the Exorcist movies and haunted house.
It's perfect because it's a haunted house movie with an exorcism. So we're bridging those two worlds.
Exactly.
Julia, what are your final thoughts?
Well, you know, I will fall short of saying I like it because I don't like any really scary movies because I don't like being scared. But I think it's a very good scary movie. I think that as a mom, I love that mother's love is what wins the day. So that's awesome. And I like that there's not a high body count. I like that there's no gore. With the exception of
there's a little bit of gore.
Oh,
she takes a nice chunk out
That's right.
70s,
All right.
70s
So
mustache
there's very little
cop.
gore. Very little gore. And a lot of good scares, a lot of good mood. Like just I like anything that is scary because of mood and suggestion more than because of, any kind of special effect. So yeah, I think it's a great film, and if I liked scary movies, I would like this one.
Yes. All right, Tony. Final thoughts. The Conjuring.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think it's really effective, and it's super scary. Like there's a lot of great, there's a lot of great stuff in there. A lot of good scares. Like I said, I watched people jump in the theater. That was awesome. For more than once. I think it's done really effectively. It's really, I don't know. I was amazed. I knew where everything was going to happen. I was still scared. I still had the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I still got the weird, crazy feeling of the sound design. I was watching it late at night, so I have a pair of headphones, wireless headphones, so I can, watch movies.
Isn't
and
this
stuff.
a Nine Inch Nails soundtrack, by the way?
I don't know.
I think this is a trend.
I was listening to it through headphones. That was scary too. And in fact, the funny thing is, I remember now. However, one of the sounds my cat could hear, like through the headphones, and he starts looking around, and so then I started looking around, like, wait, do you see something I don't see? Should I be scared? And it was just whatever was going on in the movie, but super.
No, and I kept hearing noises. Yeah, I kept hearing noises in my house, and I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. Well, because we've got a house with a just truly big ass basement. Like the basement is the size of the house, so there's literally another house down there, and it's got plenty of scares. I gotta say, plus our daughter's rooms. What are you gonna do? All right, thank you very much. My final thought is that this movie is, I think it's Tarantino-esque. I mean, I think it quotes heavily from a million other works that this director has sort of digested, and he does, rather than just simply copy them or throw them together, he really creates something that holds up as a work. It's some amazing stuff. I truly was very impressed with this, and I think it kind of is a part of, Drew was saying, hey, I've been disappointed in American horror recently, but I think over the last couple of years, there's been a few of these really, really nice-looking, I don't even know how to call them, family creep movies, like we're going to talk about Sinister in a couple of weeks, and I guess Insidious fits in this. So it's definitely part of this odd haunted genre. It's fantastic. So none of us disliked this movie. Let's do endorsements, and we'll go back to Drew. Drew, I know you've been on the road, but do you have anything to endorse for us this week?
I actually have a lot of things to endorse in the coming weeks, but I'm going to keep it simple. One, you should all go to Comixology immediately and get Halloween Man issue 6 because it's our giant-sized Halloween issue. It's 148 pages. 148 pages. It's got 2 new stories. It's got one of my favorite from the old webcomics days, sort of continuing our ongoing commitment to diversity in comics. We in this one story that is represented in this, we introduce Bella, who is a badass transgendered half demon assassin. So again, I can't think of too many trans characters in comics, and I've already gotten this week a couple of emails from people saying that, like, oh, I had never read that one before. That was great to see that. So, but aside from that, 148 pages for $1.99. Don't get X-Men this week. It's probably going to be lousy. Get this instead. Secondly, while Jamie and I were on the road, we partook of How to Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way. It's an audio book read by Bruce Campbell himself, and I have to say it is hysterical. I can imagine that the book itself is pretty funny, but just something about listening, if you can get your hands on the audio book, totally worth it just for Bruce Campbell's delivery on things. It's a fictionalized account of Bruce Campbell breaking into a mainstream romantic comedy starring Renee Zellweger and Richard Gere, and what befalls him while being in this film. And it's hysterical. The voices he does and everything. It's just so well done. And it sort of reignited my love of audiobooks. So I actually bought The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, read by Stephen Fry. So I'm going to make my way through that. I can't imagine that I will enjoy that as well. But How to Make Love the Bruce Campbell Way, specifically as an audiobook.
Outstanding. Julia, did you have any endorsements for us this week?
Well, we watched the first episode of Grace Points, which is the American version of Broadchurch, starring the same lead actor, which would be David Tennant, formerly of Doctor Who.
And of Broadchurch.
Well, as I said, sorry, the same actor as the other show. And if you did watch David Tennant in Doctor Who or in anything else, he's a completely different human being in this show. I mean, it's crazy, but it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. We're gonna check it out and watch it, because I don't know how many episodes it is, but it's a short series. What did you call it, Jason?
I don't know what they're calling it. It's a 10-hour miniseries.
Yeah.
It is. Which used to be they would just call those miniseries. Like Centennial by James Michener. A 10-hour miniseries.
Right.
Watch it over the course of a month.
But it's interesting. It's definitely intriguing. It's got Anna Gunn from Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah, no.
It's about solving the mystery of the death of a 12-year-old boy. So it's cool. Yeah. So that's mine.
Tony, do you have anything to endorse?
A couple things. Like I said last week, I was going to be parceling out stuff from Fantastic Fest, and I remembered that for gorehounds and fans of over-the-top kind of Dead or Alive kind of stuff, there is Dead Snow 2. And if you liked Dead Snow 1, then you'll probably like Dead Snow 2, where Nazi zombies try to, kill everything and people have to stop them. This introduces kind of a nod to the fact that Dead Snow did really well in the States, and so there some zombie hunters appear from the U.S., and I had a lot of fun. There's some things that I kind of nitpicked about, but, if you're in it for Dead Snow 1, Dead Snow 2 is definitely worth checking out. It's a great kind of midnight movie thing. I think I did see it as a midnight movie at Fantastic Fest, and that's awesome. Also, just found out today that we're going to be reviewing stuff. We got press credentials to go to Housecore Horror Fest. So Drew and I, hopefully Drew, I know I will be, we'll be going to Housecore Horror Festival, and we hope to see you there, and you can talk about, we'll probably be trying to schedule some things and review movies, review bands, and that kind of stuff. So if there's also anything that you wanted us to, hey, this is what I would like to hear about from the podcast, like when you come back after that, then let us know ahead of time, and
maybe we should,
I'll try to concentrate on that.
Maybe we should post the link so people can kind of see what they got going on.
But it would be cool, like, since we live in this cool interactive age, I think it'd be cool to post it, and then if people are like, wow, you got to check out this thing, let us know about it, and then we can, close that feedback loop. And I think that would be really cool. And, just as opposed to, hey, I went a place, and here's a bunch of stuff, So that's going to be really cool. I'm pretty excited. I know that the video director I've talked about several times, Phil Mucci, who's doing a Monster Magnet video that starts tomorrow that is really cool, is going to be there showing his shorts, as well as he did one called The Listening Dead, as well as his music videos. So I'm super excited about that alone, plus all the other just awesome stuff that's going to happen. So that's going to be really cool. So we'll post that, and then we can get feedback and see what we want to cover. I'm pretty excited. Hopefully, Drew will join me and we can have a hangout at the Horror Fest, which would be awesome.
That sounds fantastic. Okay, I've been busy trying to basically, I'm back working on the novel I've been working on, and I'm on the next draft, and it's taking most of my time. So I'm watching very little TV, reading a little bit, but so I got two things. One is pure log rolling, which is to say that it is Halloween time, and the new Dracula movie is coming, and if you haven't ever taken a look at Sort of Dracula, which is the comic that I did about Dracula in the modern day, basically as Cobra Commander, that you can get that on Comixology as well for free. The first sort of half issue is a preview, and it's $0, and then issue 1 is I think $1.99 or something like that. So I think I humbly submit it as something to go with your
Sort of Dracula is really like, that's how I met Jason years ago. It's actually because I liked Sort of Dracula so much, so I went to a comic signing, and it was sort of like, oh, hey, you write comics, I write comics too, and and here we are a decade on. But I will endorse Sort of Dracula because I think Sort of Dracula is really good, and I want people to buy Sort of Dracula specifically because at the time, the day I met Jason, he told me that he wanted to do a spin-off called Guns of Frankenstein, and I'm still waiting for this. So
I still want to write.
After you're done reading Halloween Man, you need to add Sort of Dracula, and then tell all your friends to buy Sort of Dracula, so it'll be financially viable. He will have to do Guns of Frankenstein because I want to know what that's all about.
Yeah. Well, sweet. I'd like to do that as well. There's this recent movie with Two-Face that I got to deal with that had Frankenstein in it. What's it called? I
Frankenstein.
Yes. So I feel stopped, but whatever. That's just an excuse.
You know what? Dracula and Frankenstein are two things you can do for, like, if you worry about that.
Yeah.
Come on, Jason. Come on. Somebody's always going to be doing Dracula. Somebody's always going to be doing Frankenstein.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing I wanted to mention, so I don't watch really anything. I'm watching Grace Point, but the fact is I don't watch a lot of new TV, mainly because I just feel I'm superstitious. I don't want to be influenced by it. So I'm constantly just living in the past. But I watched something really fascinating this past weekend, which is I watched an episode of Route 66 called Aren't You Surprised to See Me?, which is about this serial killer in Dallas. This was shot in December 1961. So it's, I guess that would make it just barely 2 years before the assassination of President Kennedy. And all of Route 66 was always shot on location, so it means they spent like a week just shooting around Dallas. So if you know Dallas, Texas very well, it's an opportunity to just see, Wyatt's Cafeteria and see SMU and Fair Park and Stemmons Freeway and the old Marriott. And it's so cool. And I mean, also it's a good story, but that's one of the things I love about Route 66 is it's such a naked document of America in, roughly 1960 to 1964. So it's free on Hulu. So if you're bored with watching new stuff and you want to run from the world like I do, Route 66, Aren't You Surprised to See Me? Great episode. And I think that is it. So here's the usual spiel. Check us out on the Facebook page. Leave reviews on iTunes. It actually helps people find the show because those reviews get picked up on RSS feeds by a million other websites. Some people like to listen on Stitcher. They can still see the iTunes reviews. Same thing with Podbay. So leave reviews. Tell your friends. Pass this along. We want to keep doing this. We got some great episodes coming up in the next month where we're doing a lot of scary, scary haunted house movies and one fun one. So thanks, everyone. We will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Night, John.
All right.
Good night.